Hi guys, welcome back. In the last session, we understood what is component scanning and how to perform component scanning in the Spring application. Can you guys tell me what is component scanning? Component scanning is the process of identifying Spring Bean classes available in the project. Spring Bean classes available in the project. So do you know how to represent Java class as a Spring Bean? By using component, by using service, by using repository, we can represent Java class as a Spring Bean. Component, service, repository, these are class level annotations. When I use that annotation at the class level, then IOC container will create the object for that class. IOC container will create the object for that class. For example, I don't want IOC container to create the object. I want to customize the object creation. How can we customize object creation? By using one annotation called @bean. So when I write a method and that method is having @bean annotation, IOC is going to call this method and it will represent this object as a Spring Bean object. Are you guys clear? Fine. Then after component scanning, by default will happen in the current package. If a current package is a base package, then it is going to scan all the other packages which are available in the project. Then after we understood a concept called auto wiring. So auto wiring is very frequently used concept in the project. Project nothing but several classes will be available. One class will be dependent on the another class. Instead of we are creating the object and we are injecting the object, we will ask IOC container to create the object and inject the object. For that, we are going to use @auto-void annotation. When we use auto-void annotation, IOC will identify the dependent based on the name. With the name, if it is find out, then it will inject it. With the name it is not able to find, then it will go for type. With the type, if two beans are matching, then ambiguity problem. How to resolve that ambiguity? By using @primary, by using @qualifier annotation also, we can do that. At how many places we can use auto-void annotation? At 3 places we can use auto-void annotation. One is at the variable level, second one is at the constructor level, third one is at the setter method level. We can perform this auto wiring. Now today, let's try to understand what is bean life cycle. What is Spring Bean life cycle? Now, can you tell me first, what is a Spring Bean? What is a Spring Bean? The class which is managed by IOC is called as Spring Bean. So whenever we represent our class as a Spring Bean, that class object creation, that class management, that class object removing, everything will be taken care by IOC container. The class which is managed by IOC is called as Spring Bean. Now we have seen thread life cycle, we have seen servlet life cycle, we have seen JSP life cycle. What is thread life cycle? What is thread life cycle? Start, run, dead. Start, run, dead. That is a thread life cycle. What is servlet life cycle? What is servlet life cycle? Init, service, destroy. Init, service, destroy is called as servlet life cycle. Whenever servlet object is created, init method will be called. When the request comes, service method will be called. When the servlet object is removed from the container, destroy method will be called. So similarly, in the Spring, for the classes, I am not creating the object. I am asking my IOC container to create the object. When IOC container creating the object for the class, I want to execute life cycle methods. I want to execute some life cycle methods. Once the object is created, I want to execute some logic. before object is deleting from the container, I want to execute some logic. For example, here I have a method in the Spring. Assume that get data. There is a method available, get data. Before this method is before this method is executing, I want to execute one init method and I want to execute one destroy method. Get data method is responsible to get the data from the database. Now, so here when my class object is created, immediately I want to execute init method. When my class object is deleting by the IOC container, then I want to execute my destroy method. So we can implement life cycle methods for the Spring Bean. I am not creating the object for the class. I am not deleting the object of the class. Object creation, object to deletion will be taken care by IOC container. Once my class object is created, I want to execute some logic. For example, I want to get the connection from the database only once. When my class object is executed, only once I want to get the connection from the database. That logic I can write inside the init method. When my object is removing from the IOC container, then I want to execute destroy method. I want to close the connection with the database. Not only database, in the real time, several scenarios will be available. When my class object is created, I want to fetch the data from Redis cache. When my object is deleting, I want to clean up the files which I have opened. Any logic which you want to execute only one time when the object is created, then you can go for init method. If you want to execute any logic when your object is removing, then you can go for destroy method. These are called as life cycle methods of the bean. So what is a bean? The class which is managing by IOC container is called as Spring Bean. For that Spring Bean, I want to perform life cycle method execution. When the object is created, I want to execute one method. When the object is deleted, then I want to execute another method. So here, bean life cycle, we can execute bean life cycle methods. We can perform some operations when bean object is created and before bean object is removed. After object creation, before object removal. So that is post creation, pre-destroy. What we can say? Post creation and pre-destroy. What is the meaning of a post creation? After object is created, then I want to perform some operation. Then what is a pre-destroy? Before object is deleted, I want to perform some operation. Post construct, I can say post construct and pre-destroy. Before object is removed, after object is created, I want to perform some operations. So to perform these operations, we can use life cycle methods. To achieve above requirement, we can use bean life cycle methods. To achieve the above requirement, we can use bean life cycle methods. Bean life cycle methods we can execute in 3 ways. I want to execute init method and a destroy method. Init method will execute as a post construct method. Destroy method will execute as pre-destroy method. Life cycle methods, bean life cycle methods, we can execute in 3 ways, guys. One is XML approach. XML approach is called as declarative approach. That is called XML. We earlier used XML file to configure our beans. Whatever the Java class available, to represent that Java class as a bean, I used XML. In that XML file, I can specify init method execution, destroy method execution. And the second one is programmatic approach. Programmatically, we can achieve this bean lifecycle methods. They provided some interfaces. By using those interfaces, we can achieve bean life cycle. Next one, annotation approach. Next one, annotation approach. So total, how many ways we can execute bean life cycle methods? So total, in 3 ways we can execute bean life cycle methods. One is declarative approach. Second one is programmatic approach. Third one is annotation approach. Okay. Now let me go for our first Spring application, Spring 1. So here, beans available, bean classes available. So let me create one more project, file, new, Maven project. I'm creating a Maven project, simple project, make it simple. Yeah, then group ID. I will show you 3 approaches in that Ashok ID 07 bean lifecycle app. Bean lifecycle app. Click on finish. So with this, my project is created. I need to add the dependency. Take the dependency, Spring context dependency. Okay, lifecycle app form.xml. Let me add the dependency here. It will download the required dependency for our project. Now, in this project, let me create one class in dot Ashok ID, and you can give any name for the class. I'm giving the class name as user DAO. So in the user DAO class, I want to write some methods. Okay, I want to write some method. Public void init method. Public void init method. And I have public void destroy method. Init method is available, destroy method is available. Inside the init method, let us write some logic getting DB connection. Let us write some logic getting DB connection. In the destroy method, closing DB connection. In between, we can execute any methods, right? Public void get data, getting data from database. System.out.println, getting data from DB. So like this, I have 3 methods. One method is actual method. With this method is responsible to get the data from the database. But what I want to do is, when the object is created for the user DAO, I want to execute this method. When the object is deleted from the IOC container, then I want to execute the destroy method. So total, there are 2 methods available. One method is my business method, which contains the business logic. The remaining 2 methods are, one is init method, another one is the destroy method. Now, I want to configure this class as a bean configuration file. Okay, let me take the beans.xml. Let me keep in the main Java. Go to beans.xml. I want to configure a bean. Do you know how to configure the class as a bean? Yes. How? Bean ID is equal to some DAO and the class is equal to package name dot class name. Package name dot class name. Perfect. User DAO class I have configured as a Spring Bean. Now go to IOC container in dot Ashok ID. That's it. Yeah. Beans is not available. So user DAO. Now let me create one test class also. New class test. It is used to test my application. Let me write a main method. I want to create IOC container. I'm using XML file to show you the demo. How to work with the life cycle by using XML approach. Tell me how to create a IOC container. How to create a IOC container? Application context. Context is equal to new class path XML application context. I need to pass config file as the input. What is the config file as the input? Beans.xml. Beans.xml. Are you clear with my point? Yes, we are clear with our point. Now I want to get the bean object. How to get the bean object? Context dot get bean of user DAO dot class. What it is going to return? User DAO is equal to that value. DAO dot get data. DAO dot get data. Now run this program. run as Java application. What happened now? Getting data from DB. Here, init method is executed. Init method is not executed. Init method not executed because did I tell to IOC to execute lifecycle method? I did not tell the IOC to execute my lifecycle method. So to tell IOC to execute the lifecycle method in the XML, we need to write some attribute. Okay. Along with ID and class attribute, I need to write a attribute. Init method is equal to init and destroy method is equal to destroy. Destroy method is equal to destroy. When I specify init method is equal to init, destroy method is equal to destroy, what is the meaning of that? When the object is created for the user dov class, this method should be called. When the user dov object is removed from the IOC, then this method should be called. Are you able to follow me? Now execute this, run as Java application. First, our method is executing or init method is executing? This is our method, man. Which method I am calling? Get data. My method, get data method executing first or init method is executing first? Am I calling the init method? Am I calling the init method? No, I'm not calling the init method. Then how we to call that init method? How we to call the init method? Because I configure the init method as lifecycle method. So here method name no need to be init. You can write this as M1 and you can write this as M2. In the XML, I can configure this as M1. I can configure this as M2. Now test.java run as a Java application. M1 method is executed as a init method. So any logic that you want to execute when your bean object is created, then you can write the init method. How IOC will know that it has to call the init method? In the bean definition, we are specifying init method is equal to M1, destroy method is equal to M2. But here, when I run this program, is it executing? Is it executing or it is not executing? Not executing. Why? Here, what is the method I have given? Init and destroy. Okay. Here, then what I need to configure? Init and destroy. Test.java run as a Java application. Observe, init only executed, both destroy init executed. Only init executed, destroy not executed. Are you able to follow me? How many ways we can achieve life cycle in the Spring? 3 ways. What are the 3 ways? One is by using XML approach. Second one is the programmatic approach. Third one is the annotation approach. So here I created a dov class. This is the method which should get some data from the database. To get the data from the database, first I need to open database connection. After that, I need to close the database connection. I no need to call this init destroy every time. Whenever object is created, that should be executed. Whenever the object is deleted, this should be executed. So here, when I run this program, init method called, but a destroy method is not called. Init method called, but a destroy method not called. When the init method will be called? Post construct. After the object is created, init method will be called. So IOC container created the object because it is a singleton bean. I did not specify any scope. Then what is the default scope? Singleton. For the singleton scope, when the objects will be created, whenever the IOC containers start, then object will be created. Object is created, then immediately init method is called. When the destroy method should be called? Before removing the object from the container. Now here, what happened is, my IOC container started. I got the object from the IOC. I called the method. After that, is there any code available to execute in my main method? Here, is there any method available to execute? Come on, man. No method is available to execute. So when there is no method available to execute, then what will happen? Main method will be terminated. JVM will be stopped. Here, does the IOC container removed the object from the container, or it suddenly stopped because of JVM shutdown? IOC container suddenly stopped because of JVM shutdown. In my main method, I have two lines of code. That code got executed, then main method got terminated. When the main method got terminated, IOC container got killed immediately. IOC container don't have any information about the JVM shutdown. Object is not removed. Suddenly IOC got closed. That's why destroy method is not executed. Actually, when that destroy method should be executed? When the IOC container closing, or when the IOC container removing the object, then it will call the destroy method. In our scenario, am I closing the IOC container? My main method got terminated. My main method got closed. That means my JVM got stopped. If the JVM got stopped, then what will happen? IOC container will be stopped. If the IOC container stopped, nothing is there. It don't know that object is removing. So in this scenario, destroy method will not be executed. So in order to observe really that a destroy method is executing or not, let me close my IOC container. Let me close my IOC container. How to close my IOC container? Here I am having application context. So here we need to go for configurable application context. It is a super interface for the application context. Now, configurable application context is available. CC context is equal to, then we are going to take configurable application context of context. Whatever the context object we have, I am typecasting to configurable application context. Whatever the context object is available, I am typecasting that to configurable application context. That is a super interface. Whenever we go for configurable application context, we are going to call close method. We are going to call the close method. So what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? I am closing my IOC container. When I close my IOC container, I am closing before main method shutdown or after main method shutdown? Before main method shutdown. So when I call context.close, IOC container got the information to stop. When IOC container is going to stop, it will remove all the objects which are available in the IOC container. When it is removing the objects available in the IOC container, it is going to call the destroy method. Able to follow me? Now, right click, run as Java application. So now can you see? Init method is executed and our actual method is executed and our destroy method is also executed. So when the init method will be executed, when the object is created, then immediately init method will be executed. When the object is removed from the IOC container, then destroy method will be executed. This is one approach. This is one approach to execute life cycle methods in the Spring Bean. That is called declarative approach. What is the second approach? The second approach is programmatic approach. When we go for programmatic approach, then you no need to write this in the XML. Directly, Spring people provided two interfaces. Let me explain that. First one, declarative approach. In the declarative approach, in the bean definition, we need to configure init method and a destroy method. In the declarative approach, let me take this DAO class. It is a normal Java class. I want to represent this Java class as a Spring Bean. When I am representing the Java class as a Spring Bean, I will specify init method, then I will specify destroy method. Perfect. So this is one approach. The next one, I want to go for programmatic approach. Programmatic approach in the Spring, to achieve the life cycle using programmatic approach, you need to implement two interfaces, guys. We need to implement two interfaces. We need to implement two interfaces here. One is called initializing bean. Second one is disposable bean. First one is initializing bean. First one is initializing bin and the second one is disposable bin. If you want to achieve bin life cycle through programmatic approach, then your bin class, for which class you want to execute the life cycle method, that class should implement initializing bin interface and disposable bin interface. Initializing bin interface provided a method called after properties set method. That interface having a method called after properties set. When that method will be called? After object got created. After object got created, they are going to call after properties set method. And there is another interface called disposable bin. In this, there is a method called destroy method. So earlier we used init method, destroy method, attribute. That is XML approach. When it comes to the programmatic approach, we need to implement initializing bin and disposable bin. Initializing bin interface providing a method called after properties set method. When this method will be called? After object creation. What is this disposable bin? It is providing a destroy method. This method will be called when the object is removed from the IOC container. All right. So let's go here. Let me remove this XML tag attribute. So just I configured my Java class. So go here, user DAO, remove this init method, let's remove this destroy method. Okay. My normal Java class is available. Implement the interface. Implements which interface, guys? What is that? Initializing bin, comma, another one disposable bin. One is initializing bin, another one is disposable bin. What is the meaning of implementing a interface? What is the meaning of implementing an interface? Override the methods available in the interface. So first one, after properties set method. Then what is the next one? Destroy method. Okay. So now let me write system.out.println. This will be executed as a init method. This will be executed like a init method. And this will be executed like a destroy method. So any logic that you want to execute, once your object is created, you can keep that logic in the after properties set method. Any logic that you want to execute before your object is deleting from the container, you can keep that logic in the destroy method. Execute this, run as Java application. Can you see? Init method is executed and a destroy method is also executed. How I am achieving the bin lifecycle? Programmatic approach. So what is the meaning of a programmatic approach? In the programmatic approach, we need to implement a interface called initializing bin and disposable bin. Is it mandatory to implement two interfaces? No. If you want only destroy method, you can implement only this interface. If you want only after property set, then you can implement only this interface. Programmer having a flexibility. I don't want to execute any logic when my object is created, then I no need to go for this interface. I don't want to execute any logic when my object is removing from the container, then I no need to go for this interface. It's not mandatory to implement both interfaces. Whichever you want, you can implement that. If you have a requirement to execute some init logic, then go for initializing bin. If you want to execute some logic when your object is removing, then go for disposable bin. So this is called programmatic approach. We need to implement two interfaces here, initializing bin and disposable bin. So this will be called after object is created. This will be called before object removing from the container. Okay, this is programmatic approach. Fine. We have another approach also, that is called annotation approach. We have another approach called annotation approach. Annotation approach. So what is annotation approach? We need to use below two annotations. We have below two annotations to achieve life cycle methods. To achieve life cycle methods execution. One is called as @ post construct. What is the annotation? At the rate post construct. Then second one is at the rate pre-destroy. Post construct, pre-destroy. What is the meaning of post construct? Which method you want to execute as a init method? For that method, you can write the annotation at the rate post construct. Which method you want to execute before the object removing from the container? Then you can keep pre-destroy. Method name can be anything. For that method, you need to configure these two annotations. Now go here. Now we have our annotation based application, component scanning and all. Bean lifecycle app is there. User DAO, test DAO is there. Now I don't want to go for XML. Do I really need the XML? I don't need the XML. User DAO is a class. I want to represent this class as a Spring Bean. I want to represent this class as a Spring Bean. This is init and this is destroy. Okay. So let me, there are two destroy methods. This is get data. Okay. So this is init method and this is the destroy method and this is get data. I want to represent this class as a Spring Bean. So what is the annotation I'm using? What is the annotation I'm using? At the rate component annotation I'm using to represent this class as a Spring Bean. I want to execute this method when the bean object is created. So what is the annotation I need to use? At the rate post construct. What is this annotation? Why this annotation is not coming? Did I add the dependency? Yes. At the rate post construct. Which version of the Spring I'm using? 5.3.25. Post construct and pre-destroy. Two annotations should come. Build path, configure build path. No guys, I'm not getting that annotation here. Let me try with some old version of the Spring. mvnrepository.com, Spring context. Let me try some old version of the Spring. Sir, one thing I'm thinking this, basically this post to construct and pre-destroy annotations are from Java X package. Maybe in the Java 11 version that support is removed. If I go for 1.8, let me try with 1.8. Execution environment, Java 1.8. No. Still it is not coming. So I will check this, sir. Why in the Java 11 this is not coming? So basically we will have two annotations here. One is post to construct annotation and another one is pre-destroy. These annotations are not from the Spring. These annotations are from the Java X package. So whenever we write these annotations, our IOC container will read the methods which are having these annotations, and it is going to execute this method as a init method and this method as a destroy method. So in this machine, Java 11 is installed. So I'm not sure whether they removed the support for the annotations or not. I will check it once and I will confirm by evening why these annotations are not coming. But generally, post construct and pre-destroy are the two annotations which are used to achieve bean life cycle. So what is the meaning of a post construct? Post construct annotation will execute like a init method that will be executed when the object is created. Pre-destroy is like a destroy method. The method which is having pre-destroy annotation will be executed when the bean object is removing from the container. So before our main method is getting terminated, we need to close our IOC container. How we are closing IOC container? Directly if you go for application context. Directly if you go for application context, we don't have a close method. We are typecasting our application context to configurable application context. When I typecast to configurable application context, then I'm having a close method. By using that, I'm doing the IOC container close. When I call IOC container close, it is going to remove all the objects which are created by the IOC. When the object is created by the IOC, then it is going to call the destroy method, whatever we have configured. Fine. So what is the purpose of a bean life cycle? Come on, guys. What is the purpose of bean life cycle? What is the purpose of bean life cycle? First of all, the bean nothing but the Java class which is managed by IOC container is called as bean class. We can perform some operations on the bean after creating the when bean object created, before bean object is removed. We can call it as post construct and pre-destroy. How many ways we can achieve this bean life cycle? In 3 ways we can achieve bean life cycle. What is the first approach? Declarative approach. What is the second approach? Programmatic approach. What is the third approach? Annotation approach. When you go for declarative approach, how to configure life cycle methods? In the bean definition, we have init method and destroy method. When you go for programmatic approach, what are the interfaces we have? One is initializing bean, another one is the disposable bean. When you go for annotation approach, what are the annotations available? @post construct and @pre-destroy. Like that, there are 2 annotations available. Currently, they are not working. When I try to access @post construct and pre-destroy, I'm not getting any package here. Actually, they have to come from Java X package. I will check it why they are not coming from Java 11 version. Yeah, that is even, I mean, we can configure that Java 8. When you configure Java 8, it will use that version at the time of build. Whenever you execute Maven goal, then it will use the particular version which we configured there. So in the IDE, it has to be taken from the build path. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Post construct, I'm not getting that. I will check it. So, but time being, remember, post construct is used to execute method as a init method. Pre-destroy is used to execute the method as a destroy method. So that is called bean life cycle. Perfect. So with this, we covered the basics that are required from the Spring Core module so that we can understand our Spring Boot concepts. Yesterday, I gave one video, Spring versus Spring Boot. How many of you gone through that? How many of you gone through that video which I have given yesterday? Very less people. Did you get that message in the group? Then why you did not watch? Sunday. It is just a 20 minutes video or 12 minutes video? 25 minutes. What? 26 minutes. What is the Spring? What is the Spring Boot? What are the differences between the Spring and Spring Boot? I have clearly explained. So if anybody asks you, what is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot? Whatever the points I mentioned in that video, you can explain those points. With the practical proofs I have shown each and every difference between spring and spring boot. But still you did not watch. Kya karu, why? Yeah. Any questions, anyone? From the spring core concepts, what we learned so far? Any questions, anyone from the spring core concepts so far? Yes. So now we understood what are the annotations that we need to use in the spring bean scope. So we discussed IOC container. We discussed dependency injection, how to start IOC, what is bean scope, what is auto wiring, what is primary attribute, what is ref attribute, how to configure Java class as a spring bean, what is a spring bean, how to get a bean object from the IOC, that also we understood. And we understood spring annotations. And we understood spring annotations. We understood component scanning, and we understood auto wide annotation, auto wide annotation, and we understood bean life cycle. So right. So annotations. Can you tell me what are the annotations that you know from the spring? What are the annotations that you know from the spring? We discussed about configuration annotation. What is the meaning of configuration? To represent Java class as a bean class. What is the scope? To represent scope of the spring bean. What is auto wide? Inject dependent into target. What is bean? To customize bean object creation. What is the qualifier? To identify the bean based on the given name for dependency injection by name. I want to inject dependent object into target object based on the name of the bean. Then we will go for qualifier. What is primary? I want to give the highest priority for particular bean to perform the dependency injection. After that, component scanning. Then we discussed about bean life cycle today. Right. Bean life cycle. If you want to execute some logic after object is created, before object is removed, then you can go for bean life cycle. Clear? Now there is one more annotation is available, that is depends on. What is the annotation, guys? Depends on. So depends on nothing but I want to specify, assume that there is one class is available. There is one class available, that is class A. Class A is available, and there is another class available which is class B. There is a class A is available, there is a class B is available. Now my class A, understand scenario, my class A wants to fetch some data from the Redis. It is a cache. What is Redis? Redis is a cache. My class A wants to fetch the data from the Redis. But here my data is actually available in the database. My data is available in the database. If my application communicate with the database every time, it will take a lot of time. Application performance will be reduced. To improve the performance, what I am doing is, when my project is started, B class should execute. This B class should take the data from the database, store the data into Redis cache. Okay, my B class should execute a query from the database, get the data from the database, and store the data into Redis cache. My class A should get the data from the Redis. My class A should get the data from the Redis. Now here, class A, class B directly dependent, or they are indirectly dependent? Indirectly dependent. Car is there, engine is there. Car and engine directly dependent. Car class calling the methods of the engine class. Engine class should be injected into car class. If one class is directly dependent on the another class, then we can go for dependency injection. But here, class A, class B, not directly dependent. Indirectly, they are dependent. In my project, what I want to do is, when IOC container creating the object for the class A, I will tell to IOC, hey IOC, my class A is dependent on the class B. Then IOC first create the object for the class B, then it will create the object for the class A. When the object is created for the class B, my init method will execute in the class B. It will fetch the data from the database. It will store the data into Redis cache. Are you guys getting my point? So how many times I want to load the data into Redis cache? Only one time. Can I execute that by using init method? How many times our init method will be executed? Only one time our init method will be executed. Now, IOC first creating the object for class A, but class A is dependent on the class B. How to tell to IOC class A is dependent on the class B? By using depends on. By using which method? Depends on. Are you clear? Now, see here. Let us make the class for this. User DAO is available. User DAO is implementing initializing bean. Implements initializing bean. Remove these things. When I go for initializing bean, which method I need to override? I need to override after properties set method. In this, I will write a logic, get data from database, system.out.println, store the data into Redis. Store data into Redis. So whenever DAO object is created, then it has to execute after properties set method. What is the logic I am writing in the after properties set method? What is the logic it is executing in the after properties set method? Get the data from the database and store the data into Redis. Okay. Now here what I want to do is, I want to create one more class called user. I want to create one class with a name called service class. User service. User service. I want to represent this as a service. Represent this as a service. Okay. Inside this, I'm writing a constructor. System.out.println user service constructor. User service constructor. User service constructor. If you want, I can make this class in a separate package to show you the difference exactly. ashokit.service. Okay. In this service class, I am writing user service. Okay. Now I'm removing from here. I'm keeping this in a separate package. Okay. So I want to delete it from here. And the user DAO class available, that also I want to keep in a separate package. in.ashokit.dao. Take the DAO from here, keep in the DAO package, delete it. Okay, now test class is available. Test class is available. DAO class is available, and service class is also available. Okay, now I want to remove this XML file as the input. I want to go for annotation based configuration. How to make annotation based configuration? I need to create a class called app config. How to represent this class as a configuration class? @configuration. And what is the component scan? @component scan. What is the base package? What is the base package? In dot ashok it. The base package is in dot ashok it. It will scan that package and it will scan the other packages also. Let me delete the test class from here. Now let me create one package, and that I am going to create the test class in dot ashok it dot test. So that is the package name. Create a class with a name called test. Let me start my IOC container here. Let me start my IOC container. I'm using annotation. Can you tell me how to start the IOC container by using annotation? How to start the IOC container by using annotation? By using annotation called application context. Context is equal to new class path XML application context. Then new annotation config application context. I need to pass app config dot class. What I need to pass? App config dot class. I'm passing as a input for this. Application context. Context is equal to new annotation config application context app config dot class. I am passing. Now let me run my application. Run as a Java application. Now what is happening here? Getting the data from the database, store the data into Redis, user service, constructor is executing. First, DAO class is executed, then service class is executed because it is scanning in the alphabetical order. It is scanning in the alphabetical order. So for example, if I keep this user service class in the base package, if I keep user service class in the base package, then which object will be created first? Now see here, earlier when I am scanning the project, first which class object created? DAO. After in.ashok it DAO is scanned. So as expected, DAO object created. If the DAO object is created, load the data, store into Redis. Instead of class B, class A, let me call it as DAO. And this one I'm keeping as service. Okay. Now let's observe. Run this application. Test class run as Java application. Now which object created first? User service. But actually which object should create first? When the service can get the data from the Redis, man, here assume that here getting data from Redis. Let me write it. Getting data from Redis. That is the logic. Now run this application. Run as Java application. What it is doing? First it is trying to execute the service class. What service class is doing? Getting data from the Redis. But first of all, data stored into Redis or data not stored into Redis? Data not stored into Redis. Who is responsible to store the data into Redis? So first service object should be created or DAO object should be created? First DAO object should be created. But what IOC doing? First it is scanning the base package. In the base package, user service is there. Blindly it created the object. Then after it scanning the DAO package, then a DAO object is created. Now I want to tell to IOC, boss, my service is dependent on the DAO. If you want to create the service object, first you need to create the DAO object. How can I tell to IOC container? By using a annotation called @depends on. It is dependent on what? Value is equal to. We need to specify the string type. So depends on user DAO dot class. Now it is not taking like this. Depends on user DAO. Now run this application. Run as a Java application. Then which one is executed first? DAO is earlier. Which one executed first? Service. Now why DAO is executing first? I configure my service is depends on the DAO. So if you want to give you a different name, but when I have not given any name, directly whatever the class name available, I'm passing that class name here. If you want to give some name for that dove, then you can give like that. So bean name, I'm going to specify as user DAO. That bean name I will give for the depends on. Now run the test class. Run as Java application. First DAO methods are executed. DAO object is created. When the DAO object is created, what happened? Am I calling this method or it is executing automatically? It is executing automatically. Why it is executing automatically? Because it is a life cycle method. How many times this life cycle method will be executed? Only one time after the object is created. So when IOC trying to create the object for the service, I am telling to create the object for the DAO first. When the object is created for the DAO first, that life cycle method I have implemented, it is executing that life cycle method. Now tell me, what is the purpose of depends on annotation? What is the purpose of depends on annotation? When one bean is dependent on the another bean, when one bean is depends on the another bean, we can specify that by using depends on. Dependency injection is different, depends on is different. What is the dependency injection? Inject one class object into another class. That is called dependency injection. Then what is the depends on? If I want to tell IOC before creating, if you want to create the object for my class, first you create the object for other class, then create the object for my class. In that scenario, we will go for depends on attribute. Anybody not able to understand? Anybody not able to understand? What is it depends on? To specify one bean object should be created before my object creation. Then I will go for depends on. What is the difference between dependency injection and depends on? Injecting one class object into another class is called dependency injection. Depends on means you first create other object, then you create my object, right? Depends on. What is depends on annotation? What is depends on, right? So to specify the dependent bean of that. So here I'm giving you user DAO depends on example. So this is my Dove class and this is my service class. So I specified my service is dependent on the DAO. So user service is telling that user service bean telling to IOC to create user Dove object first. That's it. That is the purpose of depends on. Clear? Yes, sir. No, yeah, you can specify multiple beans also. If you see here, depends on annotation is having value is equal to string array. You can specify bean 1, you can specify bean 2 also. I want to create the object for 3 beans. Before my bean object creation, you can specify more than one bean ID also. That is the reason for the depends on they have given value type as a string array. What is the meaning of string array? We can pass more than one string. What is that more than one string? Representing ID, bean names, other bean names which you want to create. Multiple bean names also you can supply for the depends on, right? Perfect. Guys, with this, we are stopping our core Spring concepts. Same concepts will be used in the Spring Boot also. IOC, DI, dependency injection, bean life cycle, bean scope, auto wiring, we understood. From tomorrow, we are going to start with Spring Boot. So whatever the remaining topics are there in the core module, we will learn them along with the Spring Boot. So this XML configuration will not be available. Automatic configurations will be available in the Spring Boot. Before coming to tomorrow's class, I want everybody to go through that video so that you will have the clarity. What is the Spring? What is the Spring Boot? What is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot? Tomorrow when I ask you a question, you should be able to answer me. What are the differences between the Spring and Spring Boot? So from tomorrow, we'll start with the boot concepts. Thank you guys. Tomorrow morning, we will start with the GitHub. So tomorrow morning, we'll start with the GitHub. Everybody should create the GitHub account and download the Git software and practice the Spring concepts. From tomorrow morning GitHub, evening Spring Boot concepts will be available. Thank you. Yep, we'll see you in the tomorrow. Notes I will upload in the portal. Okay, guys. Yep. Online people, anybody having any questions, you can raise your hand. Along with Spring Boot. हाँ समझ में ना आया है पता नहीं यार क्या गाइस हाँ देखता मैं कल वो लोग आता है देखता है हाँ ठीक है सर